Hey everybody, quick talk here. Daniel wrote a new paper. I don't want to steal his thunder. It's about dinosaurs. Dinosaurs. It says here, what dinosaurs tell us about pre-Earth Astrons? And basically, it goes over Levenspiel's idea mixed with stellar metamorphosis and the fact that dinosaurs were aquatic. Now, I know a lot of paleontologists, they'll get all in a huff about this type of talk because they want large, giant creatures such as this outside of the water because they say that their lungs would collapse from the pressure of the water. Only there's a few problems with that, and Daniel overviews that. I'll put it in my own terms. Hi, Celeste. Essentially, paleontologists, they take assumptions about the world around them, and they assume, and they assume, and they assume. Assume. They're very good at assuming things. One thing that paleontologists assume is that the Earth was always the size it is, and the atmosphere is the same pressure that it is, about the same pressure. But in fact, dinosaurs show us that it wasn't the same pressure. And also we have a reason for why they went extinct. Their environment just disappeared. Daniel supports this understanding. Levenspiel supports this understanding. People who understand this theory support this understanding. Earth was very different in the past. Here's a different way of looking at it. A lot of astronomers and paleontologists and a lot of the mainstream dogmatists, they'll get really in a huff about this, but the sun is around 13 million years old. Jupiter is around 700 million. Saturn's about 550 million. Neptune is about 1.2 billion. Earth, 4.5 billion plus. And as you see here, it goes through a huge change. Huge changes. Of course, there are intermediate stages in between all these others. But dinosaurs are sort of like towards the very end and a more of a aquatic state that the Earth was in when the atmosphere was still really thick. And just to keep this talk a bit shorter, I'll explain something to you guys. Paleontologists, what they want you to believe is that this painting by the guy Zdeněk Burian, I think 1941 and 1947 he painted it. Paleontologists got on a huff because they said, well, this painting was clearly wrong because the dinosaur underneath the water, its lungs would collapse from the pressure. So you go about 33 feet below the water line, say maybe about right there. You go about 33 feet below the water line, it's about 2 atmospheres of pressure. So 1.5 to 2 atmospheres of pressure, that would collapse his lungs and he wouldn't be able to breathe, because there'd be too much of a pressure differential. There's only 1 atmosphere up here, 1 ATM, and 2 to 3 ATM, or if you want to say bar down here of water pressure. What they're not understanding, the paleontologists aren't understanding, is that Earth's atmosphere wasn't the same density as it is. Gases are compressible. Liquids, mostly incompressible, which means you can increase the pressure of the gas and it will behave a lot differently than the liquid is underneath, because the liquid is it's an incompressible fluid for the most part. And what they're doing is they're saying, well, the dinosaurs will collapse because 2 or 3 atmospheric pressure of the water pressure would collapse his lungs, and when the air moves up, he wouldn't be able to catch a breath because it would just be squeezing him. But what they don't realize is that this area up here was also a lot higher in pressure. Maybe about 2 to 3. And even earlier, 3 to 5. Even earlier, 5 to 7. And then the further you go back into the star's history, the denser, the thicker, the more massive the atmosphere is. Of course, that's going in reverse. I don't know, there are new people to this theory. I always have to do this little diagram here to show y'all. The dinosaurs were about like right here. and you go further and further and further back, the atmosphere gets thicker and thicker. So if you have a thick atmosphere, you can have the dinosaur breathing in a thicker atmosphere, and there will be the pressure will be equal. It'll be equal down here as it is up here, which means his lungs won't collapse. He'll be able to breathe. And that's the large majority of these dinosaurs, is that they lived in a semi-aquatic environment where they spent a lot of time in water underneath there. And a lot of the paleontologists, they're sort of like, oh, it's impossible. And they just rejected everything, and they, jumped on the wagon and decided to disavow all the common sense understanding that was in the past, not realizing that they were engaging in groupthink. Anyways, that's that part. Good job, Daniel. I'll go ahead and link your paper to the bottom of this talk. The second part of this is for those people who don't realize, but back in 2001, the Genesis spacecraft was basically a spacecraft that they sent to orbit the sun, I believe, or there was they positioned it at Lagrange point 1 or L1, and it would collect solar wind samples in this little solar wind collector where the solar wind particles would smash into it, and then they took it out of that L1 and brought it back to Earth, and it crashed on the Earth, but they were able to recover some of those samples. And what they discovered is that the isotopes of the nitrogen, of the hydrogen, of the oxygen, they did not match in abundance with the isotopes that are found on the Earth. As well, those earthly isotopes don't match Jupiter, and Jupiter matches only a few different isotopes of the sun, but it is also different than the sun. And what that tells us, and it has here on the NASA website, I don't know if a lot of astronomers are even aware of this, if they just ignore it. I don't know. But the key discovery here, back in June of 2011, which is July, August, September, 3 months before I stumbled upon this understanding that stars evolve into life-hosting stars, or Astrons, called planets. They're the same things. Planets and stars are the same objects. 3 months before I discovered that, they have here researchers studying the solar wind return sample from the Genesis spacecraft find evidence that the Earth possibly formed from different solar nebula materials than those that created the sun. Of course they discovered that it's different. Look, all these objects, none of these objects are related to one another. They didn't all form in the same location. This object is extremely young in comparison to this. This is young compared to this. This is younger than this, but that's because it was on a faster transformation curve. This is younger than this. And what you see here is the physical diameter changes, the mass changes, the composition changes. There's so many different changes that happen to the star as it evolves that it's just sort of, it's hard to imagine, but also easy at the same time. And the astronomers realize it, maybe paleontologists will realize it, maybe the chemists will realize it, maybe the entire scientific community can sort of, look deep inside of them and realize that they've sort of been misguided this entire time, and that the Earth is vastly more impressive than they could have ever imagined. It's a very, very, very old star. And if you want to call it an Astron, that's fine too. Which sort of makes sense, because Astron, A-S-T-R-O-N, is the prefix to astronomy. Ami is the study of, so astronomy would be the study of Astrons, astronomy. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there to you guys. They found out that this object is not related to this object, is not related to this object. They're all not related to each other by isotopic abundance. But for some reason, a lot of the nebular hypothesis articles and publications that scientists still push out to this day, 2020. This was the Genesis mission was a full 9 years ago as well. the discovery was full 9 years ago from my perspective, they still sort of, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing with their time. I don't know why they still push the idea that all these objects formed in the same disk when it's been clearly falsified. It's almost as if this Genesis mission that they spent millions of dollars on didn't even happen. It's very strange. All right, guys. Again, good job, Daniel. I hope to see more papers in the future. And all right, dinosaurs.